Dash, fantasy team win or loss last week?
Lost.
Beat nuts.
Welcome to the Steel City. Is everybody ready to go? It's we're playing the greatest radio show.
Welcome, fans, to our Week 14 edition of our fantasy football segment. I am your host, Jim Sella. I'm in studio, as usual, with the best fantasy football mind in the world, Jay Dash. Is that building you up too big there?
No, it's all good.
All right. Well, I want to thank you, fans, for tuning in to The Spread. You can follow us at bet_the spread for all your fantasy news. Check us out on Facebook. Keep listening to those segments on YouTube all day long.
Either the last week of the season or the first week of playoffs for fantasy teams.
That's it.
So let's go.
Important times.
Believe. Tier 1, Drew Brees, Peyton Manning, Aaron Rodgers, Andrew Luck, and Tom Brady.
I mean, what can you say about all of them? If you have them and you don't start them, you're an idiot.
Yeah, especially Drew Brees this week. I think he's going to kill Carolina. They're just a terrible team.
They're awful.
Tier 2, Phillip Rivers, Matt Ryan, and Russell Wilson.
Russell Wilson's still getting it done with his feet, so that's keeping him in Tier 2, huh?
Yeah, that's pretty much it, though. Their passing game has been weak for over a month now.
Since they got rid of Percy Harvin.
Yeah, pretty
much.
much.
And it's weird because he didn't play a huge role in it last year, and they were not great, but they were good.
Yeah, if it wasn't for Russell Wilson using his legs, he'd be in Tier 6, Tier 7. Tier 3, Ryan Tannehill, Ben Roethlisberger, and Matt Stafford.
I'm surprised to see Ben still in your Tier 3. He struggled a little bit the last couple games, 4 TDs and 5 picks in his last 3 after having 2 straight 6 TD games. He has 6 TDs and 5 picks in his 6 road games this season. He has 340-plus yards in 4 of his last 5 games.
Yeah, that's pretty much why he's still up here. If you remember last week, he looked like crap in real football.
Right.
But he was actually one of the top 5 fantasy quarterbacks because he threw for 340 yards and had those 2 touchdowns.
Well, I think it was 435 last week against the Saints, wasn't it?
Oh, yeah, it was more than 340.
Right.
He's just thrown for so many yards recently that he's a guy that I'm going to play. He isn't as good on the road, but still, he's getting it done in garbage time.
If he doesn't get it done, we're not going to win. So if the Steeler fans want to win, Ben Roethlisberger better put up some points.
Matt Stafford, he had a big week last week. He had 390 yards and 2 touchdowns on Thanksgiving. But previous 2 weeks before that, he completed 36 of 76 passes and had 0 touchdowns. So I'm not sure if he should be in Tier 3, maybe the top of Tier 4, but if you have Matt Stafford, it's hard not to play him.
Did he maybe struggle without Calvin Johnson being there? He's not really used to not being able to just throw the ball up in the air whenever he wants and watch Megatron come down with it.
Tier 4, Kyle Orton, Cam Newton, Sean Hill, Eli Manning, and Colin Kaepernick.
I like how Sean Hill's rated above Eli. Bleep you, Eli. Cam Newton, how's he still in Tier 4?
It's tough. I mean, look at these quarterbacks below him, though. You can't just put him down below Josh McCown.
Or the butt fumble. Yeah, I get your point.
But, yeah, he has a good matchup this week, too, going into New Orleans, who lets up the 7th most of fantasy quarterbacks. But he has 5 touchdowns and 8 interceptions over his last 5 games. And he's thrown for under 200 yards passing in 3 of those games. So, really, he looks like crap this season. But he's still, I mean, he can use his legs still. So, he's another guy that isn't going to be at the bottom of the list no matter what, because he's still one of the better quarterbacks in football, even though their O-line is garbage.
Another guy that can use his legs to keep him going is Colin Kaepernick. He's going up against Oakland this week. They give up the 14th most fantasy points to quarterbacks. Kaepernick's having a down year as well. He only has 5 TDs and 4 picks in his last 6 games and no more than 263 yards passing in any of those games. He actually has less than 200 yards in 2 of his last 3 games, so those aren't big fantasy numbers. He does move around well and create mismatches with some linebackers, and when he gets in the open field, he's definitely a mismatch with almost anybody on a defense, but he's just not putting together the type of season that he had the last couple years.
Yeah, he's pretty much like Cam Newton. They're pretty much the same player right now, and really, Russell Wilson, he's actually getting it done with his legs more, so that's why he's up in the must-starts, but if he wasn't getting it done with his legs, all 3 of these quarterbacks are pretty much the same thing. Tier 5, Mark Sanchez, Colt McCoy, Teddy Bridgewater, and Ryan Fitzpatrick.
The butt fumble's got a tough matchup this week against the Seahawks. They give up the fewest points to fantasy quarterbacks. Some people think Sanchez has looked real good as the Eagles starter. I'm not really sold on him. I think, yeah, he has played well. The numbers show he's played well. But this is a really brutal matchup. The Seahawks are a great team. He's going into Seattle, correct?
No, it's at home versus
At home?
Seattle.
Okay. Well, so he has a chance. If it was at Seattle, he would have no chance at all. But the Eagles put a good offense around Sanchez. They give him the opportunity to succeed more than the Jets did. So, yes, he'll play better than he did at New York, but I'm still not sold on the headband-wearing butt fumble.
Well, listen, this is, like you said, a brutal matchup. They let up the fewest points to fantasy quarterbacks. That's why I actually have him in Tier 5. If he had a good matchup, I'd have him up in Tier 3. But going against Seattle, this is do or die time for most fantasy owners.
Believe it?
I'm not going to trust it this week versus this defense.
He's bound to run into one of his offensive linemen and just drop the ball.
Tier 6. Josh McCown, Zach Mettenberger, Andy Dalton, Drew Stanton, and Joe Flacco.
Is Mettenberger hurt? I read an article briefly. I actually kind of perused it. I didn't exactly read it, and it just said Mettenberger says he'll be ready to play.
Yeah,
All
he had
gangster-like.
the questionable tag, but everything says he's going to go.
Or did he have Hep C or something?
He has a good matchup this week. He goes up against the Giants. They let up the 5th most to fantasy quarterbacks. He has 4 TDs in 2 home games and at least 1 TD in all 5 starts. So he's been pretty consistent, but he's not going to blow you away. So I'm not going to trust him this week.
Well, I see you got Andy Dalton here against the Steelers. Pittsburgh gives up the 15th most points to fantasy quarterbacks. Dalton has 1 TD or less in 5 of his last 7 and 10 interceptions in that time. And he has just 2 touchdowns and 6 picks in his last 3 home games. All that said, I think he's going to have a much better game against Pittsburgh. You know, it's a big rivalry game. They're both going to be passing a lot. The Steelers will feature Le'Veon Bell, but we do feature him in the passing game. So Dalton's going to have to be throwing the ball to keep the going, and I think he's just going to have a big week against Pittsburgh. They've given up 298 points this year.
So that's your sleeper quarterback of the week then,
Andy
huh?
Dalton. I hate him. I really hate him.
I'm going to say nonsense. Garbage. Start Zach Mettenberger over.
Nah. You go ahead and start Hep C over Dalton. I'll take the redhead.
Tier 7. Alex Smith, Brian Hoyer, Blake Bortles, Derek Carr, and Geno Smith.
Geno Smith back as the starter for the New York Jets. He's going up against Minnesota, and they give up the 9th fewest points to fantasy quarterbacks. What can you really say about him other than he's garbage? They only let him throw the ball 13 times last week. They ran the ball for like 200-something yards. Rex Ryan does not trust Geno Smith. He's mad because the GMs made him play Geno, so his way to stick it back to them is to only let him throw the ball 13 times, and I don't see it changing. Rex Ryan is bullheaded. He's very confident in his approach to the game. He doesn't like to be told what to do, and if those upper management types are trying to tell him what to do again, he will not let Geno throw that football because he knows if he does, he's going to throw 15 picks to the other team.
If anybody's in a money league and they start Geno Smith in their playoffs
You
this
deserve
week,
to lose.
I will give you $20. Just hit me up because that's hilarious.
Well, let's talk about some tight ends. You got Jimmy Graham, Rob Gronkowski, Julius Thomas, and Greg Olsen in your elite. Thomas is expected to play, and Olsen is expected to play.
Yeah, they're both questionable, but Julius Thomas was actually expected to play last week, though, and he ended up not playing. So you'll have to see, but I think he is going to go this week. And I start all 4 of these guys.
As long as he's not a ninny lala.
Tier 2, Antonio Gates, Jordan Reed, and that's it. Bennett already played yesterday, had a huge game.
Yeah, I thought so. I didn't get to watch it.
Garbage time.
We got Antonio Gates going up against New England. That seems like a good matchup.
Yeah, I mean, you look what's below him, even if it's not a good matchup, you play him anyways. But Jordan Reed, look, with Colt McCoy, 9 catches, 123
Snake.
yards on 11 targets.
You need to get with his real name here, buddy. It's Snake.
Yeah, whatever.
Snake McCoy.
Anyways, Jordan Reed, I think he's a good play. When RG3 played, he did nothing because RG3 couldn't get the ball to anybody.
He's garbage.
But with McCoy, he looks all right, so I'm putting Reed back in Tier 2.
Snake Plissken's in. Robert Garbage III's out. Jordan Reed blows up.
Tier 3, Larry Donnell, Kobe Fleener, and Jordan Cameron, I'm going to say. I'm going to go out on a limb. He's questionable. If he goes, play him.
What do you think? You think Hoyer's going to stink it up in the first half and Manziel jumps in?
I hope so, but either way,
Love Johnny football.
I think if you look what's below Cameron on this list, if you're in the playoffs, I'm going to go with a guy that can have a huge game.
Yep.
If he puts up 0, so be it, because the guys below him are going to put up 5 to 10 points. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I'm going to go with a guy just like Kobe Fleener. Yahoo, I believe it was, maybe ESPN, I forget which one. They were saying he's going to have a terrible game. He's going to have like 4 to 6 points or something. I don't care. He had 33 and 27 in 2 of the past 3 weeks. So I'm going to play these guys and just hope for the best. You know what I mean? Hope for a big 30-point game.
That's all you can do, especially when you're you and you just got blown up by DeMarco Murray last night.
Yeah, that hurts. That's another reason to do it. But I still say that's a better idea than just going for a guaranteed 5 to 10 points or whatever.
Jordan Cameron definitely has the talent to have a huge game, and if Hoyer can get his head out of his bleep, he'll be all right.
Tier 4, Dwayne Allen, Heath Miller, Delaney Walker, Kyle Rudolph, and Charles Clay, who's questionable. And I don't think he played. No, he did not play over the past 2 games.
I like Kyle Rudolph, the red-nosed reindeer. Closer it gets to Christmas, the better this guy's going to play. He's going up against the Jets. The Jets are garbage. They give up the 4th most points to fantasy tight ends. He did have just 5 catches for 57 yards in his first 2 games back from injury. He did score last week, and it's a great matchup going up against the Jets. Bridgewater's looking a little better as time goes on. He's a little more comfortable in the offense. They're doing a little more rollouts with him and just trying to get players open in the flat. That calls for a lot of dump-offs to your tight end. And if that happens, Rudolph can easily score. If they get in the red zone 3-4 times, that's where he's good. And they have nobody else. They benched Cordero Patterson.
They actually have that Charles Johnson that's doing okay. But
so Rudolph's definitely going to get more targets.
But yeah, Kyle Rudolph's another one of those guys that have the high upside. He's hard to trust because of the quarterback. But like you said, Bridgewater has been playing better of late. He has 4 touchdowns in his past 2 games. And Kyle Rudolph has high upside. So he's another guy that can put up 20, 25 points out of nowhere for you. So take a chance on him, I say.
What do you got for tier 5?
Travis Kelce and Michael Rivera.
Kelsey's going up against Arizona, who gives up the 6th most points to fantasy tight ends, I believe. He only has 2 double-digit fantasy performances in his last 8 games and just 1 TD in his last 7 games. Listen, folks, this is a tier 5 guy, so you're not really going to have big stats here. This is kind of like a run and gun, chance it. If you have nobody else, if you got screwed and missed out on the waiver wire like I always did, because last year the moron commissioner had it on some kind of rotating basis, and even though I was in last place, I could never get anybody, you got to play this guy.
These 2 guys right here, Kelce and Rivera, are guys that are good, but don't have good offenses around them, and especially at the quarterback position, so it's hard to trust them, but they are good players. If you put them on a different team, they would have much better stats.
Blowing up.
Tier 6, Jermaine Gresham, Scott Chandler, Jared Cook, and Owen Daniels.
Jermaine Gresham going up against the Steelers is a great matchup. Pittsburgh gives up the 10th most points to fantasy tight ends. I hate to keep bashing on the defense, but if you listen to our segment on Steelers preview coming up here in a little bit, you're going to hear me blow up that defense because they've been god-awful this year. Gresham, not a huge upside, but he does remain involved in the offense. However, he has no touchdowns this season at home and more than 36 receiving yards only twice this year and none since week 7. But the Steelers always give up big plays to tight ends. Troy's losing a step. Shazir's coming back from injury. I'm just not sold on this defense, and I think he has an easy chance at having a big game.
Okay, so Andy Dalton's your sleeper quarterback, and Jermaine Gresham's your sleeper tight end.
Please believe.
All right.
There's the matchup.
There's a Yinzer right there. Tier 7.
I'm going against the Steelers.
I know.
How am I a Yinzer?
Well, I thought you were a Yinzer, but today I guess not.
I'm a sports journalist.
Tier 7. Vernon Davis, Tim Wright, and Zach Ertz.
Tim Wright, I called it a couple weeks ago. He was going to have a big game. He's going to have another big game. He's going up against San Diego. They give up the 3rd fewest points to fantasy tight ends. That means they're going to be featuring Rob Gronkowski. They're going to be going after him, trying to shut him down, doubling him up, putting help over the top. That leaves Wright open. He's going to have probably a nickel back on him or maybe a backup safety. He's definitely better than their backup players. He has 6 touchdowns over his last 8 games, but amazingly only has 1 reception or less in 5 of those games. So basically the thing is if he catches it, it's a touchdown. The more touchdowns, the more points. Genius.
This is a tough matchup for him. At San Diego, they let up
San
the
Diego,
fewest.
they're going to go after Gronkowski though, man. They're not going to try to stop Wright. So that leaves Wright open.
All right. You heard it here first.
That's
Play
right.
Tim Wright if you have nothing left. Tier 8. Eric Ebron and Mercedes Lewis.
Ebron's kind of been a bust for the Lions this year. I'm not going to call him a bust overall, but just for the season. They
Bust.
thought they want big things out of him this year in the passing game. It hasn't come. He's had a lot of drops. He is going up against Tampa Bay, who give up the 14th fewest points to fantasy tight ends. He has 23 yards or less and 0 touchdowns over his last 5 games. So he's been pretty much garbage. I don't even know why you got him on the list.
Mercedes Lewis is garbage too. Don't play him.
We always got 5 good defenses for us every week, Dash. You put these defenses in your lineup, it's almost a sure victory. What do you got this week?
All right, we have Minnesota versus the Jets.
Who are garbage?
Baltimore at Miami.
Tannehill's garbage.
New Orleans at Carolina.
Carolina's garbage.
Indianapolis at Cleveland.
May see Johnny football.
Yeah, I'm hoping not, if for Indy's sake. New York Giants at Tennessee.
Whom are both garbage. So usually when 2 garbage teams play, big points come up, and a lot of times it's because one team offense is terrible and another team's defense gets mad points.
Well, I'm going to say play Minnesota this week. The Jets have given up the 5th most to fantasy team defenses, and their offense is just garbage. We've been saying it all year long.
So bad.
The only team they can beat is the Pittsburgh Steelers. So, look, the Vikings had 4 sacks, a pick, and 2 TDs last week. Now, you can't expect the 2 TDs again. You probably can't even expect 1 TD. But it doesn't even matter. Minnesota's had their good games. They play well versus bad offenses, and this is the worst offense of all, so I'm playing Minnesota.
I like Indy at Cleveland. I'm not sold on Brian Hoyer. He's been pretty bad over his last couple games. People keep saying his record's 10-5. His record's 10-5. Okay, but I'm pretty sure he's lost like 3 of those games in the last 5 games or something like that. So he's obviously not playing that well this year. Indy has a chance to be real good. They rush the passer well. They have 10 sacks, 1 pick, and 2 fumble recoveries, and a touchdown, I think, even over the last 2 games. That's pretty beast.
It is. Like I said, though, I just hope they don't put Johnny Manziel in, because that could screw everything up. You don't know. The unknown's scary.
It is. I hate quarterbacks that run around like weirdos, try to chuck the ball downfield. They last for about a year or 2, and then they become Vince Young. So
well, I actually hope Johnny Manziel does get in the game, but if you're going to play Indy's defense, I'm hoping for you he doesn't.
Bleep you, Manziel. You suck. Well, thanks, fans, for listening to The Spread. Thanks, Dash, for sitting in with me. You guys can follow us on Twitter at bet_the spread. Any fantasy questions you have, if you need to get that lineup tuned up right before the start of the game, you can check us out on Facebook, like us there, and listen to that YouTube channel.
Good luck this week.
Believe it.